Welcome inside another edition of Celtics Roundtable here on CLNS Media. CLNS Media, the leading online provider of audio video coverage of your Boston Celtics. Welcome inside, everybody. A Wednesday morning, a Wounded Warrior Wednesday here on Celtics Roundtable. Myself, alongside Sheehan and Matt Ignal. After the Celtics drop one, a tough loss in overtime to the Pelicans, 116-113 TD Garden. Today's episode is brought to you by Simple Contacts. Simple Contacts is a convenient way to renew your contact lens prescription and reorder your brand of contacts from anywhere in minutes. It's vision care simplified. Well, just before we even get into this thing, Sam's got the flu. Matt's moving, so he's calling it on his phone. So this is basically as good of a makeshift podcast as you could possibly do. I sympathize with Sam because I've done shows before, severely under the weather. So I appreciate Sam powering through this thing. So we'll get to this thing really quickly. Obviously, Anthony Davis is going to be a monster topic of this podcast. He was outstanding last night. But first and foremost, guys, the end of the game execution, a little weird. No, I mean, I feel like they had the timeout in the pocket. I understand what Brad was trying to do. Let your star player kind of play it out. But I feel like that's not the possession you want with 11 seconds left in the game, down 3 points.
Yeah, I mean, this is you kind of live by the Kyrie, you die by the Kyrie, right? I mean, like, this is kind of, what you're going to get sometimes with Kyrie Irving. He is, he's a big shot guy, and then anybody else, like I saw, Ryan Bernardoni say on Twitter that, he hit one of the biggest shots in NBA history doing that dribble away right wing 3-pointer. And now he kind of thinks that's his end of game shot. And it doesn't go in maybe as often as you would like for an end of game situation.
Well, it's easier to defend when he's got to shoot the three.
Right. That's the context here. And I mean, the Celtics really shot themselves in the foot with the mediocre play kind of leading up to this. You don't get down as and sort of play from behind a Pelicans team that besides Anthony Davis, I don't know. I felt like this was one of those games where the Celtics, I kind of thought the Celtics were going to be up just because usually like when the other team isn't playing particularly well, the Celtics are up and they just weren't. And Kyrie Irving was kind of had a frat party experience tonight over the course of the game where he was blacked out and AWOL for the first, hour, rallied, came back in the second half and was his normal self, but then couldn't quite hold it together and threw up all over himself in the last 5 minutes again. But I don't know. I also don't want to beat up too much on Kyrie because I think this was going to happen. But, you really don't want to, after you're coming off of 4 days of rest, you don't want to lose at home to, a non-top flight to your team if you have ambitions of winning 60 games,
The sky is falling for sure. But, yeah, Kyrie got outplayed by Jrue Holiday down the stretch, who defended him really well and also hit some big-time shots. One of that 13-foot floater was a really tough shot that he managed to hit, and he got really good position on I think the very next play, and on the left block was able to kiss it off the glass. It was kind of interesting that Kyrie Irving was matched up with Holiday. I don't know if I agreed with that decision necessarily, but it was an interesting choice to me. But Kyrie was not up to the task of being physical icing that pick and roll on that last play where Holiday hit it off the glass. What'd you guys think of that decision, putting Kyrie on Holiday?
Well, they exploited that mismatch a little bit later in the game. There was one play I remember specifically where it looked like Holiday had no place to go. He was posting up Kyrie on the block, and then out of nowhere, he kind of did this up and under slippery move where it looked like he traveled for a second and then got this easy 2 in there, which was a little weird. But I'm with you, man. I got to give Holiday a lot of credit. He was very good defensively against Kyrie in this game. Boston, where you stick Kyrie at that point, Ian Clark? Yeah, Ian Clark. He had a really great game for New Orleans. He hits a couple of huge shots for them that I thought he had no business hitting, but he was surprisingly very confident in that end. Drew Holiday is a matchup nightmare for Kyrie only because he's just more physical than Kyrie is, and especially as they get down in low block, Kyrie needs help, and that brings a defender from another place, and then the rotations get out of whack, and then everything kind of snowballs a little bit. Holiday made some big time shots for sure, especially in overtime. He had one big one to put him up at late in the overtime period. I go back to that Kyrie play. And I kind of like what Brad was doing there, being like, you know what, let's just ride or die here. This is like, for those of you that are clamoring, they're like, why didn't Brad use a timeout? This is what Brad does. Like, you have to understand that Brad is using the regular season as like kind of a litmus test, if you will, instead of like a learning tool for these guys that just in case we didn't have a timeout left, let's see what they would do. I think obviously in the playoffs that'd be a different scenario. Brad does a timeout with like 11 seconds to go. They probably go for a quick 2, then they foul, and they try and get a 3 late in the game or whatever. They find a way to get that shot. I am not mad about Brad not using that timeout. I thought later on I would be as I thought about it, but the more I thought about it, I was like, Brad does things in the regular season just to see if it works, and I think this is another one of those cases.
I'm pretty sure the data suggests that you should not take that timeout, that I think teams have historically been more successful in similar scenarios when the timeout is not taken. Don't quote me on that, though.
No, I think you're right. I think that I think the pretty generally widely accepted use of a timeout is you let you let your guys push, see if anything's there, and if it just turns into regular half court defense, then you would take the timeout. But I kind of agree with what Evan's saying, where Brad is so even keeled about the regular season. He's really not too concerned with wins and or losses. He doesn't feel himself, like he doesn't feel the team if they're going on a 20-game win streak. He'll say things like, we're not as good as our record, like totally straight-faced. He's not just playing around. And he'll also say, in bad losses, he'll say, I thought we had some good shots. And that's, he's very much process oriented. And I think that's what you want in a coach. And it's tough to see. I mean, maybe I'll regret this down at the end of the year when the Raptors get the 1 seed or whatever. But if it feels like the Celtics don't necessarily need to win all these games. They've stolen enough games that, I still feel like they could get to, high 50s, low 60s, even with dropping one like here or there.
I'm just happy. Go ahead.
No, I mean, I get that. I get the idea that where Matt's coming from. I don't know if the data might suggest one thing. I think it depends on scenario. In the NBA, it's a little bit different because you have so many good athletes out there at a given time, and it lets the other team set up their defense and all that stuff. I think it depends on the scenario. Like, there's a good college example I use all the time. Harvard taking on UNC in the tournament. Tommy Amaker, the coach for Harvard, and you had Roy Williams, the coach for UNC. And I think Harvard was down 1 or 2. One of the two. I don't remember exactly which one. And Harvard had a timeout left at the end of the game that they didn't use. Instead, they just kind of ran with it and lost that game because they got a bad shot at the end. And I'm like, in that scenario, like Tommy Amaker is a better X's and O's guy than Roy Williams is. I would have preferred the timeout there. But like this kind of scenario, it's a little bit different when you have, it's not a do or die scenario. You can play with a game or two and see, and it's not going to really have a big effect on the regular season standings. You're still going to win a lot of games going forward. I still think, there are a lot of things in this game that were very interesting. And again, the big topic of Anthony Davis is coming in a little bit. But like, I think Brad, even at the end of the game, did some weird stuff. Like, he rolled with Daniel Tice a lot of that fourth quarter, and Daniel Tice rewarded him with a really great play. But at the end of the game, I'm sitting there looking, I'm like, man, Jason Tatum is not on the floor, and there's a minute left in this game, and Daniel Tice is on the floor. I wonder if we'll live to regret this one. And at the end, I don't mean to nitpick on Brad, because Brad is, like, for me, the coach of the year right now. One thing is not going to deter from that. But I found a lot of the things at the end of the game, one part of the Brad Stevens, just to see it, let's throw it against the wall and see if it sticks. If it doesn't, fine, we'll throw it away. If it does, great, we'll build off it.
So I got a hot take.
All right. I love Matt hot takes.
The Celtics should trade for Anthony Davis.
Oh, dude, come on. At least prep me for that. I don't know if I can. I can't handle that right now.
So wait, can I? Like, I know that was a bit, but I'm actually my semi hot take coming into this is I'm not sure. I'm not sure the Celtics need to have a ton of urgency when it comes to trading for Anthony Davis. So,
this is good. This is controversy.
Yeah, like, I don't know. I mean, I think we're going to end up agreeing on this because obviously circumstance matters quite a bit. Obviously, if you can get, data and everything else, and just general fandom will tell you, if you have a chance to go get a guy, you go get the guy. But it's really absurdly unheard of rare to have a team be as young and as good as the Boston Celtics are right now. Like, it is the only real comparison that is there to have is the Thunder. It's the Thunder. It's the 2008 young Thunder that were derailed by cap mismanagement and trading James Harden too early. Who knows if that team ends up winning? Who knows what that team looks like. So I don't know. I would be a little careful when saying this type of stuff. Obviously, you go get Anthony Davis, but if there's if the price is something wild, and given I was insanely wrong about Kyrie Irving and the price that was exacted for him, so you can feel free to dunk on me for that. But I think we need to sort of understand that the Celtics are in rarefied air when it comes to team building and what good shape they are in right now.
I want to give my hot take on this, but before we do that, I just want to tell you guys about Simple Contacts because I recently tried an app called Simple Contacts, and I have terrible vision, and it really saved me so much time and money on ordering contact lenses. So I really got to share this with everybody. It's ridiculous. You want to wear contacts. Look, honestly, sometimes I don't want to wear contacts, okay? But you probably dread the annual eye appointment to renew your prescription. I know I do. It stinks. Your pupils dilate. You can't see when you drive home. It stinks. You get those sweet glasses, though, so that's at least a perk. Those, awesome 85-year-old glasses with the thick lenses and, they're green tinted. They're fantastic. Well, Simple Contacts brings the doctor to you, and you can take a vision test at home in under 5 minutes. Then a real doctor reviews your test and writes you a new prescription. This is super easy in the comfort of your own home. Simple Contacts offers every brand of lenses, and their prices, folks, are unbeatable. But let me tell you something. My listeners also get $30 off their first Simple Contacts order with the code Celtics. So save $30 on your lenses. Go to simplecontacts.com/Celtics or enter the code Celtics at checkout for $30 off for this absolutely amazing deal with Simple Contacts that makes seeing, life a little bit easier. But let's get back to Davis, because this is much more fun. The thing about Anthony Davis, I mean, you watch him in the game last night, and he was absolutely absurd. You kind of start to think about how he fits with this Celtics offense. So let me paint the picture for you guys. If those of you that don't know what Anthony Davis looked like in the Celtics offense, it would look very similar to Al Horford. They're similarly skilled players. Anthony Davis is a better rebounder. Anthony Davis is a better athlete. Anthony Davis is a better defender. But Al Horford spaces the floor a little bit better from three-point range because he's a better shooter. But Anthony Davis, only 24 years old, still a lot of time to grow in that area. I think there was a point in that game where I'm watching the game, and Anthony Davis is facilitating from the high post. And I'm like, man, I don't know if they do this enough. Because if you put him in the high post, you start having guys backdoor cut and move off without the basketball in their hands, he becomes a significantly more dangerous weapon because of the attention that he draws. And if he's going to knock down shots and jump shots like he did tonight, where you have to respect the shot, I mean, he is such an unbelievably interesting puzzle piece that it is, frankly, really tantalizing to watch him play and be like, man, what would he do with a coach like Brad Stevens at his disposal?
Yeah, I think it's obvious that he'd fit like a glove and he'd be amazing, and that the Celtics should trade for him. But we don't know what the price is, and frankly, he's probably just not on the table at all. I think I heard on Dunk on Mark Stein saying that he expects the Pelicans to give Boogie a full 5-year max, and that seems to me to indicate that they're pushing their foot on the gas and are not looking to be sellers anytime soon. So, although we're talking about this and we're really excited about this, and the Celtics have the pieces to trade for him, and, he might get them up at least near the Warriors level. If it's coming down at all, it's probably not coming down anytime soon. So, but, it's a fun thought exercise to see, but I think it's far more likely that the Celtics say draft their next great big rather than trade for a guy like AD.
I mean, the one thing I will say is that AD definitely fits the profile of the players, that Danny Ainge targets. I mean, like two years ago, they tried to get Kevin Durant. I think maybe if Kyrie Irving doesn't hit that Game 7 shot, maybe the Celtics do get Kevin Durant. Like, that was on the table. Like, the Celtics were in the room and one of the finalists for getting Kevin Durant. And that's a whole other different timeline for this team. But and I think he absolutely would trade what would be considered a king's ransom for a player of the caliber of Anthony Davis, just because he is that guy who could end up being, an MVP talent, a multi-time MVP talent for you, if he stays healthy. My thing is that the Celtics, there's never been a team this good, this young, with as many picks owed to it as the Celtics squad. Like
but this... Sam, you gotta consolidate this stuff, and you know this better than anybody. In order to make cap sense, you can't just hand out a bunch of maxes and mid-level contracts. You want a big three essentially, and trading some pieces for that big fish certainly helps with that. That's true, but also Jason Tatum, if Jason Tatum was not as good and he was, maybe looked a little bit more like Jaylen Brown, maybe looked his rookie season or something like that, then, we're maybe the conversation, I think, changes a little bit. But Jaylen Brown has a really good chance to be a multi-time all-star player. Al Horford, I don't know. I mean, I just think everyone undervalues Al Horford, who you would absolutely need to send back in that deal. And I'm going to be writing this up later this month, but there's what makes a team really, really excellent is keeping their draft picks, nailing them and working with them, and not, sort of, if you're going to pay your role players, paying the right ones. And the way the Celtics are positioned right now is they don't have a lot of role players. It's really just Marcus Smart and Terry Rozier for guys who are, that are people are on the fence about paying money to. Everybody else, like Abdel Nader, you could draft all of these guys and you could let go, your Abdel Naders and, I love him, but Semi Ojeleye, could also Daniel Tice. These guys are very good, serviceable players, but when it comes to drafting and keeping a Memphis pick or a Lakers pick or a Kings pick, there's got to be that's the other side of the coin, and that's how you stay good for a long period of time.
I agree with that. Financially, it's a little complicated, a little muddy at this point, just because of I'm sort of kind of writing something right now, and it sort of revolves around that. And I've hemmed and hawed over a couple of things, a couple of minor details. But one of the big things is the one thing that a lot of people don't really talk about is how the hell does Boston afford all these people at some point? It just can't. The financials, I don't know. I mean, the way the guys are staggered, maybe that works out because Al's 31 and might be teetering off at some point, and at the end of the deal might cost less. And then you have Hayward, who will be probably entering Al Horford territory by the time he hits this next contract. Then Kyrie Irving hits the next bench up mark where Gordon Hayward is at. Maybe the way they're structured in terms of their age, maybe this works out. But I don't know. I feel like Matt has a point. Consolidating some of your assets to get a monster prize might be the way to go. And as much as I love some of these guys, they're going to ask for Tatum, and the reason Tatum, who did he mess up last night? Was it Dante Cunningham on that nifty crossover behind the back pull up, jump shot from the right side in the first half? I forget who the guy he absolutely roasted was, but it was a beautiful move that you don't see a lot of 19-year-old guys bust out with confidence. And you're seeing him do that a lot.
19-year-olds.
Yeah, I mean, just seeing him do a lot of that stuff. And as soon as he did that one time, he started getting more comfortable with that kind of stuff and going forward. You just don't see that. And like, you get caught up in the moment right now, but if you project a guy that can do that right now at 19, 3 years down the road, that's a very scary player. So I understand a lot of people's reluctance to maybe give up a guy like that in a deal for Anthony Davis, but that's the guy they're going to ask for. And so when you weigh things, when you think about the contract situations that Matt has alluded to, and you look at the fact that Anthony Davis is a freak of nature, you consolidate your assets and you maybe pull the trigger. Now, like I think Anthony Davis is definitely worth trading for if I were on the trading block. But I agree with what has been said. I don't think he's on the trading block yet. I think if you're New Orleans, and you learn from your mistake with Cleveland and Kyrie Irving. Maybe there's a way to patch that up. Maybe you play the season out and you can patch it up a year before his contract comes up, and you can try and convince him to stay here long term because somebody else is going to leave or something like that. You don't pull the trigger now. Now is not the time. If he's unhappy or whatever, you find a way to try and make that bridge okay. And during the last year of the contract, you dump him from what you can. But I agree that they will ride this out and they will do whatever they can to see Anthony Davis stay in a New Orleans Pelicans uniform, because that guy. You can go decades without finding a guy like that. But before we do leave, we do have to mention very quickly, and it's really terrible that we're mentioning it very quickly and not doing more of a justice on it. But JoJo White, the 1976 Finals MVP, a Hall of Famer, passed away yesterday afternoon from cancer. Obviously a Celtics legend, a guy that I made a slight sort of joke about, but I don't know if you guys have seen pictures of JoJo White when he played, but that guy would have been part of the Ojale factory. He might be Shemi Ojale's dad, and definitely was on the board of directors at the Ojale factory right up until his passing. So hearts go out to the White family, of course, the Boston Celtics for suffering a tough loss there. A class act of a guy. You see all the stories out now about how generous he was with his time and with the storytelling to some of the younger crowd in Boston. So that's always good to see. But a little shout out to JoJo White, who passed away yesterday from cancer at the age of 71. That's going to do it for this episode of Celtics Roundtable here on CLNS Media. I want to thank you guys for listening in. I want to actually thank my co-host tonight, Sam Sheehan, for battling the flu, Matt Ignal for battling just extreme exhaustion from moving. I want to thank you both for joining me here on a late night. Thanks for everything, guys. I want to thank the listeners out there for tuning in. And I want to thank Simple Contacts, our new sponsor. So make sure you guys go online for all your contact stuff at simplecontacts.com and use that /Celtics at checkout there. So if you haven't figured this out, we're all over the place at this point. YouTube, follow us on YouTube, on Twitter at CLNS Roundtable. Follow us on clnsmedia.com. We are literally everywhere. Subscribe on iTunes and Stitcher. We'll keep you updated with more fun shows coming your way all throughout the second half of the season as we keep things rolling. Celtics lose this one, 116-113. Anthony Davis, yeah, we'd like that guy. But we'll be back tomorrow with more great stuff. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time on Celtics Roundtable here on CLNS Media.